The Panthers signed 3 players to a PTO. What are their chances of actually making the team? All this and more on today's Locked On Florida Panthers podcast.
You're Locked On Panthers, your daily podcast on the Florida Panthers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome into this Thursday, September 11th edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. Thank you for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. I'm Armando Velez from the Hockey News. You can follow me on X at MondoMan12. Follow the show anywhere you listen to podcasts and on YouTube. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel, and you can win $300 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. You can do that all on FanDuel. So, Panther fans, grateful to be back here once again on another edition of the show to discuss everything in the world of the Florida Panthers. Today, we are going to discuss the 3 signings to a professional tryout, also known as PTO, that the Panthers signed yesterday, and also what are their chances of making the team? What is the strategy from the preseason to maybe even later on in the season with the following signings? And also, we are going to discuss Evan Rodrigues' conversation with the Empty Netters pod, and also Sam Bennett bringing the Stanley Cup to Benny's buddies in Fort Lauderdale. But yes, today is September 11th. It's been 24 years since the horrific events that happened at the World Trade Center, the Pentagon, and also a plane crash in Western PA. So this is a day of reflection. And if you are on the YouTube channel, you could see that I am wearing a red bandana here, and it's based on the story of Wells Crowther, the lacrosse player from Boston College who worked at the World Trade Center, always aspired to be a fighter, and saved a whole bunch of people's lives on that horrific day, on that Tuesday in 2001. I was 7 years old, going on 8. So that's at the time that the memories are not very vague, and that you have a full grasp of like what's going on. As my mother was a teacher at the school that I was at, I was not taken out of school. Instead, I went to her classroom while the rest of my classmates were taken out of school on that horrifying day. And it's also a day of reflection. Once again, it's also a day of reflection based on everything that happened in yesterday's event in our country as well. So this is really a day to reflect on, no matter what side of the political spectrum that you are on. But let's get right to the conversation points that we got to get here on the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. So yes, the 3 players that the Florida Panthers have signed to a professional tryout are the following: Noah Gregor, forward, defenseman Ben Harpur, and also forward Tyler Motte. So going to start with Noah Gregor. So Noah Gregor, 27-year-old Edmonton native, 4th round pick by the San Jose Sharks, spent the first 5 seasons with the Sharks, has gone up and down with the organization, never exceeding more than 63 games. He also had a second stint with the San Jose Sharks with the San Jose Sharks before he signed a PTO with the Toronto Maple Leafs. So this is not only his first PTO. This is his second PTO that he signed. But in the case of when he was with the Toronto Maple Leafs, they actually signed him to a deal after. Signed that contract at a vet minimum, played a whole season there, scoring 6 goals and 6 assists in the 63 games, and had a 1-year deal with the Ottawa Senators after that. Played 40 games with them, and in late January 2025, struggled with a lower body injury, placed on IR, later placed on LTIR. But then just a few weeks after being activated off of LTIR, he was traded back to the San Jose Sharks in the Fabian Zetterlund deal just this past season, where he played 12 games, only scoring 1 point. Defenseman Ben Harpur, Hamilton, Ontario native, 6'6", 231-pound left shot defenseman, 2013 4th round pick from the Ottawa Senators after playing in the OHL with the Guelph Storm and later the Barrie Colts in his last season there. Made his NHL debut in 2016. After 5 games, he was sent immediately to the AHL, even went as low as the ECHL with the Evansville Icemen. In the 3 seasons he only played, he only suited up for 51 games in the 2018-2019 season, scoring 5 points, 1 goal, and 4 assists, and was a -13, where he mostly played on a pair with Cody Ceci and then some time with Christian Jaros. So according to Money Puck, both of the pairs that he was on was under a 45% expected goals percentage. So not a lot of times where he was just pinned in on his own end, even with his size was beaten off the pucks and a little not really fleet of foot for him. But then later on was what played with the Toronto Maple Leafs, but only played in the AHL. Then was later traded to Nashville for a 1-for-1. The Panthers saw a lot of Ben Harpur in the 2021 season, as the Panthers and the Nashville Predators were in the same division due to the 56-game COVID-shortened season. Played only 34 games there, scoring 7 points, no goals, was up and down with the taxi squad, struggled with COVID in the very next season, went down for a conditioning stint in Milwaukee, but only playing 19 games with the Nashville Predators. Eventually signing 2 different deals with the New York Rangers. One was a 1-year deal, and then the other one was a 2. The first was in 2022. As the season started, he was up and down between New York and Hartford, but only really played with the New York Rangers in that first season. And then after signing a 2-year deal, he was a constant on the waiver wire, and he was called up for depth purposes, never playing, and then right back on the waiver wire there, and not getting picked up, to keep a little bit of note there. But now at 2025, at 30, he's looking at an opportunity with the Florida Panthers on the PTO. And then Tyler Motte, 30-year-old Port Huron, Michigan native, was drafted in the fourth round by the Chicago Blackhawks, made his NHL debut after playing NCAA hockey at the University of Michigan. Played only 33 games for Chicago, was later traded to Columbus in part of the Artemi Panarin deal that also brought Brandon Saad and Anton Forsberg back to the Chicago Blackhawks. And then he was later traded, along with former Panther UC Jokinen, to the Vancouver Canucks in exchange for Thomas Vanek, and then later signed an extension there. Truly found a home in Vancouver, where he played at most 74 games in 2019, was mostly a depth forward piece, never exceeding 50 games when he got to the New York Rangers. And then he bounced around from teams like Ottawa, then back to the New York Rangers, Tampa Bay, Detroit, and now with the Florida Panthers. So the Panthers have seen a lot of Tyler Motte in the last few years, with the 5-game series in 2024, and then in 2022 in the Eastern Conference Final with the New York Rangers there. So this is a time where deadline spurs actions for the front office for the Florida Panthers and Bill Zito, where you're trying to get a few pieces in the mix for camp. Right now, the Panthers are hitting the ice for their prospect showcase. As far as the practice, the games don't actually begin until Friday, September 12th. So these are kind of the mix-in of pieces that the front office and the coaching staff want to have on the ice, because the fact that the Panthers have gone through different and long playoff runs especially in the last 3 years, you don't want to overtax your stars when it comes to these preseason games. And thankfully, for not only the Panthers, but in the entirety of the NHL, the preseason games are going to be lesser. So we're kind of seeing that trend to begin with in the NFL, where the starters are not playing a lot of the preseason, or some of them are not even playing at all. So with the lessening the preseason games, chances are we're not going to see Alexander Barkov much or at all, especially come next year when those preseason games are shortened to 4 games for the entirety of the league. So we're seeing these signings of PTOs, because the Panthers at this point in time just need a few bodies in order to give their big guns some rest. So it's going to be mixed in with those guys. You're going to see them likely suit up in every single game, especially in the beginning when there's that doubleheader between the Florida Panthers and the Nashville Predators that's going to take place on September 21st on the Sunday in Nashville, 3 p.m. and 7 p.m. for the 2 games. You need to at least get in a few more there. And hey, the Matthew Tkachuk injury is that you'll definitely need bodies, but you're getting 3 more of them at least temporarily for the Panthers. So this is the great opportunity. But we're going to talk about the chances of them actually making the roster for the Panthers, and what is the strategy? Could this be something that the guys could be signed to the Panthers later in the season? We're going to discuss that and more next here on the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. And the NFL season is here, and FanDuel is making sure you're ready for kickoff with a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets across the app. And I love using FanDuel because it's a chance for same-game parlays and even a chance at a comeback in case a team falls down and you have a chance to bet before the bets get locked and for those comeback wins. And you can make every game more exciting. You can still bet on MVPs, division title odds, all on FanDuel. So are you ready to play? Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet. And thank you guys once again for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day here on a Thursday. And just thinking about the amount of PTOs that the Panthers sign. I mean, they weren't as tight to the cap this year as they were last year when they did sign Matt Luff to the PTO prior to the season starting. But this all has to do with the fact with just getting a possible insurance policy. And I will say, right before I get to this segment, that the chances of any of the three guys of making the team to begin with is likely less than 5%. But this is the chance for the coaching staff to get to know who these players are from a character's perspective, and if they fit. If the chances are that maybe Matthew Tkachuk is not ready by January, right before the NHL is going to be sent to the Olympics. So every time there's a PTO signed by this team ever since 2023, I think of the whole Eric Staal PTO when the Panthers originally signed him. Staal was coming off of signing an AHL contract so that he could play in the Olympics, and then got another opportunity with the Panthers, which, hey, that was a big signing for the Panthers and getting them to the Stanley Cup final in that year, which Eric Staal starting it off with a shorthanded goal in Game 1 against the Vegas Golden Knights, but also was great on the penalty kill for the Cats. There was a big part of that. But hey, none of these players are Hall of Famers that they're signing. Eric Staal is likely going to be in the Hockey Hall of Fame one day. But with what's already going on with the roster, with the fact of Matthew Tkachuk being on LTIR to start the season, you, for the most part, already have your 23 players that you are going to have on the roster, which once again, the Luke Cunnin signing, the fact that he scored double-digit goals in 6 times in his career, that's a big piece for the fourth line for the Panthers as a checking type of line, and that he could shift from a wing to center, and that's a player like Noah Gregor who can shift from center to wing and also can play that checking line role as well for the Panthers, and we'll get a chance to see this in the preseason. But it also comes down to the fact, like I mentioned earlier, will Matthew Tkachuk be ready for what the expected date of January? And in the case that he's not, that cap hit that the Panthers will get the relief of throughout the season could work wonders for the Panthers, because it can't work immediately for the Panthers, because you still have to have the total of 23 players when the season starts, which the Panthers will have that luxury. If Matthew Tkachuk is activated, the Panthers will be up to 22 based on the math of dishing out deals and getting and trading Evan Rodrigues and possibly Jesper Boquist there. But after the trade deadline, you could exceed the 23-player roster limit as long as you're cap compliant. And in the case that Matthew Tkachuk can't come back, or in the case that someone else gets hurt, you have the opportunity to bring these guys back and sign them. Because remember, the Panthers had Eric Staal on the ice before actually signing him to an actual contract as a non-roster player. He was on the ice with the team, and he was spotted there. So maybe is this an opportunity for in the future of bringing some of those guys back? There's honestly that possibility. And when it comes to the chances of who could come back, will all three, the chances are very low for all three of them, especially Ben Harpur, because he's just been so up and down. Every season that you look on his elite prospects profile, you see at least a stint in the AHL. And I'm just thinking more and more about how much depth the Panthers do really truly have on the blue line. I mean, you're thinking after the second pair, you're going to see Jeff Petrie and Uvis Belinskis interchange on the final pair, which chances are it might be mostly Jeff Petrie as the right-handed shot. There's some stability there. If Uvis Belinskis is back in the lineup, you're going to shift Dmitry Kulikov on his offside, and he's mostly going to play there. So for the Panthers to make less of that less of those switches, chances are it's going to be Jeff Petrie taking that. And also he could be the quarterback on the power play too. It's more of an upside, even though we saw at times last season of Uvis Balinskis running that second unit and even the first unit at times for the Cats. So the chances of Ben Harpur are really low because Uvis slash Petrie, 7th defenseman, interchanging the 8th defenseman for the Panthers that is going to be called up first. And we've seen this over the last few years. The Panthers are still very high on Tobias Bjornfot. He's going to be the guy, but every championship team and every competitive team, contending team, they're going to possibly lose some guys on the waiver wire. And for the Cats, it could be Tobias Bjornfot as a guy, as teams might want to get a little bit of a sense of what the Stanley Cup champions do well, their meetings, and what they and how they go about things. And so they want to get a little bit of a piece of that culture. So if there's the time that Toby Bjornfot gets called up and then placed back on waivers and gets claimed, maybe that's an opportunity for Ben Harpur to be back with the Florida Panthers there. So other than that, I don't see an opportunity there. And like I mentioned, when he was called back up with the New York Rangers, he was called up not playing and then put on waivers once again just for filling in a roster spot for them. And when I think about the highest upside for each of the other two forwards, Noah Gregor is still that one guy who's just maybe some untapped potential as a guy who's a little younger. So that's also the chance there. But also when it comes to Tyler Motte, he's been in the bigger games more often than Noah Gregor has. So that's also someone who could be part of this mix in the case that an injury does happen, because like Doug Plagans always says, the 23 guys that you start on opening night are not always the same 23 guys that you are going to start with in game one of the playoffs. So we will see that. But a lot of the guys playing that the Panthers signed to these PTO, are not ones who have exceeded the 50 games. Noah Gregor hasn't played past 50 games in the last few seasons. So but you won't need him to play those 50 games in my opinion. You'll just need him to fill in a spot, but it won't be immediately for this Panthers team. Chances are look around February, March to see where this team is at from a health perspective, and then judge from there. We're going to bookmark this and look back at it to see if the Panthers might need to bring those guys back, because the Panthers, with their how thin the prospect pool is, they're going to really need those guys at least full seasoning in the AHL before calling up. I don't see this as the season for those call-ups to fill in spots, even though Sandis Vilmanis has been there for quite a bit in the Panthers system. Jack Devine's just arriving, Grayson Sachin's just arriving, Hunter St. Martin as well, which those three are on a line together, which is really exciting for what we've seen out of the tweets from the prospect showcase practice from Fort Lauderdale as right now that I'm seeing come through my social media as of right now. But we're going to transition over to segment number 3, where we're going to discuss. We're going to give our takeaways from Evan Rodrigues' interview with the Empty Netters podcast and Sam Bennett spending time with the Stanley Cup and bringing it to the Humane Society of Broward. We're going to discuss that and more next here on the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. And most people can't name all their financial accounts or what they're even worth, whether it's 401ks, properties, or investments. And when you don't have the full picture, you can end up leaving money on the table. That's where Monarch Money that's where there is Monarch Money. It's an all-in-one personal finance tool that brings your entire financial life together in one clean, easy-to-use interface on your laptop or your phone. Monarch is built for people with busy lives, and if you've been putting off organizing your finances, Monarch is for you. Monarch does the heavy lifting for you. You can link all of your accounts in minutes, see clear date visuals, get smart categorization for your spending, and finally feel in control of your money without ever touching a spreadsheet. Don't let financial opportunities slip through the cracks. Use code LOCKEDONNHL at monarchmoney.com in your browser for half off of your first year. That's 50% off of your first year at monarchmoney.com with code LOCKEDONNHL. NHL. Segment number 3 here on this Thursday, September 11th edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Thank you once again for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. And just wanted to discuss a few takeaways from the Empty Netters podcast of Evan Rodrigues' appearance there. As far as fans from afar, that from what we've seen of Evan Rodrigues and his day with the Cup, enjoying it at Disney World and getting a chance to sponsor a family there while he was staying at the Four Seasons. So just an overall great gesture by Evan Rodrigues, and just being able to make a few dreams come true there for his kids and also another family, drinking the chocolate milk out of the cup from Nesquik, as he's around my age, so he kind of understands and grew up with a little bit of the Nesquik, especially I grew up with mostly the powder when I was drinking it as a kid. But he also did tell the story about almost getting his leg amputated at 10 years old due to the swelling in his knee. If hockey didn't work out for him, that he was planning to become an accountant, and that he was a fan of numbers since he was 13 years old. So also, we know about his story of being undrafted and then getting a chance to play for the Buffalo Sabres, where he also played with his college teammate in Jack Eichel. Boston University, his fourth visit there, and also got a chance to make the team. Ended up making the championship game, unfortunately losing to Providence in the championship. And also spoke about playing with Alexander Barkov. That Barkov is more similar to Sidney Crosby than he is to Jack Eichel and even Sidney Crosby. So a little bit of he's also a little bit of comparison there on just how they play, how close they want to be around the puck, or whether the other guys are going to find him so that he could shoot the puck. He also spoke about the pressure was off right before Game 7 of the 2024 final due to how nervous he was with Games 4, 5, and 6. Wasn't able to eat, wasn't able to sleep properly. But once Game 7 happened, it was more of a relaxed group. And you hear Brian Lomberg saying together forever after this one. So and obviously the cushion helps with the 3-0 series lead. But the fact is that they had to remind themselves of just going back to hockey and just saying, hey, you just have to win this game. The pressure was on Edmonton to try to complete the biggest comeback since the 1940s, but was able to speak on winning the first time versus the second time, and also waiting a few hours in the rain before taking off for Game 3 in 2024, but also discussed how different it was this time around with the travel, how they knew that they had Edmonton where they wanted where they wanted them, due to the fact of them being in Florida more often than they were in Edmonton, and the travel, and then the fact that there was a one-day gap between Games 4 and 5, and with all that, McDavid and Draisaitl playing a whole bunch of minutes, getting up to the 30s. So that really, truly helped with the Panthers and being able to roll the four lines versus the Edmonton Oilers. So that helped there. And also, he almost didn't make the parade this year because of the traffic going to the two bridges, one off of Los Olas and one a little bit more north of it. And he had to get a police escort, and the police escort was not in cars. It was the police officers in bicycles that were able to help Evan Rodrigues get to the first bus for the parade. So spoke about a little bit about that. So a little bit of a funny story there. So also to move on, if you want to get a chance to listen to the full interview, it was 50 plus minutes. There's only so much I could summarize in just a 10-minute segment. I highly recommend you guys go listen to the Empty Netters pod. So Panthers massage therapist Mike Valsey also had his day with the Cup. He also had time with his family. He also had a public event at the Quarter Deck restaurant in downtown Fort Lauderdale, right on the beach on Los Olas. We saw plenty of fans, like Big C's of the Big C's show, and then media members of Roy Bellamy and David Dwork be present there, and they got to share them with the Stanley Cup. So Roy mentioned it, how the Stanley Cup wasn't hiding, where it went to so many places and he missed it so many times, but he was able to not miss it this time as they were able to make a public appearance. And then there was a house party where I believe Jessica Blaylock of Script Sports was able to post herself kissing the cup, wearing red. and also getting a little bit of a picture. So same pose, just a different year there. But the most heartwarming story of the day yesterday for when it comes to the Stanley Cup, even though Benny already had his day with the cup out in Ontario, and then him and Aaron Ekblad back-to-back days that they had the cup, Benny had a second day with the cup, this time in South Florida, taking it to Benny's buddies in the region. So going to full screen this post by our friend Alex Baumgartner of the 5 Reasons Sports Network. And yeah, you see the little puppies, you see the Benny's Buddies logo in the very back with the hockey stick on the Y going through the eye, and then the retro logo there for the Panthers. But you see those baby kitties there and the small puppies there. So you see Benny along with some other media members, and then but the Humane Society of Broward County is also has their little section dedicated to the Florida Panthers and Benny's Buddies. So this is just an outstanding partnership that Sam Bennett and the Humane Society of Broward County are continuing to put together to make sure that dogs and cats do get a home, and also the fact that it's a contract year that he did it in, and also the fact that Sam Bennett is also going to open up an online shop for apparel, which I'm very excited to see when that gets released. I will be I'll be buying at least a hat immediately and wearing it on the show, and maybe wear it to practice. It's not a Panthers logo, so media year, it's not acceptable to wear anything of team logos, but if you're supporting a good cause like Benny's Buddies, I don't see a problem with it. So maybe that's something that I'll support there. So yeah, and definitely and Sam Bennett getting paying for 41 adoption fees during his season, based on regular season, the 15 goals in the playoffs, and then the 1 goal in the Four Nations final after not playing in the first game. Mind you, he was a scratch in the first game, and then was able to make an impact, change the identity of Team Canada, and was able to get them gold at Four Nations. So a big year for Sam Bennett, and honestly, this might be an even bigger year for him. So fresh off that new deal, and also the fact is that he's still making an impact in Broward County for all the animals there. So very happy for everyone involved. And if you have a chance to adopt a pet, if you're in the position to adopt a pet, I highly recommend you pay a visit to the Humane Society of Broward. I haven't had a chance to visit personally, but it might be something that I might have to do in the near future, and check it out myself to see what that part looks like. That's in the partnership of the Florida Panthers. So yeah, fun day yesterday when it comes to the Stanley Cup and where it's been, and also the PTO signings that we saw throughout the day. Just tells us that we're one step closer to hockey. So that's going to do it for today's edition of the show. On tomorrow's edition, though, Nick Fairbanks will be making his return to the podcast, as we will have another edition of Fairbanks Friday. We're going to be previewing the rookie showcase, and we are going to discuss which Atlantic Division team is most likely to get the Panthers number in the regular season. So thank you guys for tuning in, and we will see you all again tomorrow. But in the meantime, if you like what you're hearing, please subscribe to the podcast to be notified every single time the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast jumps into your podcast feed. Don't forget to also subscribe to the other shows on Locked On NHL Network, including Locked On NHL, Locked On Fantasy Hockey, Flip Livingstone and Steel Roden, and Locked On NHL Prospects. Thank you once again for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. Armando Velez signing off. And you've been listening to Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Where's your team? Every day.